and welcome to Diversity in the Community. I am your host, Teresa Harris. I am so pleased to have with me tonight my good longtime friend,
all right.
Pastor Deanne Williams.
Yes.
Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you.
And I'm so proud of you because you've been doing so many wonderful things. So Deanne is the president and editor-in-chief of KD Gospel Magazine, and she's the host of KD for Life broadcast on WSDK 1550 AM and 95.3 FM.
Yeah.
So Deanne, won't you tell us something about yourself, what you do, and
Well, my name is Deanne Williams. I'm a pastor, Branch Line Ministries, but most importantly, I am a servant of God and was commissioned to start a magazine. And I'm gonna back that up by saying I'm just a big kid in love with God, and so excited, to just do what He wants me to do. And so He asked me to start a magazine. It's been about 12 years now. And I absolutely knew nothing about writing. And he actually started me off with a book.
Okay.
And that's how I got my practice writing and editing. And so I published my first book, Unforgiveness, the Unnoticeable Sin. And then when he spoke and said the magazine, that was a whole nother ball game, because it wasn't just about writing and editing. You had to know what you was doing. And I'm like, God, you got to be crazy.
Yeah,
So, but again, I'm a big kid, so I'm like, okay, Daddy, what we doing?
No, and I saw, I've seen different sections of your magazine. In the magazine, can you tell me some of the different things that you highlighted in the magazine?
Okay, we do fitness. Oh, I love fitness. Okay, so our tagline for our actual broadcast of the radio station is sponsoring total wellness, and that's exactly what we do in our magazine. We're a full body magazine. We're not just about entertainment. We're a full body magazine, which means we do financial articles, fitness articles, articles on food, travel, wellness of life. We do survivor stories. We love our survivor stories and testimonials. And then at the end of the magazine, you'll get your little word of encouragement from whatever pastor chooses to take on that challenge, because we send out a challenge, and whoever agrees to do it, it's no big I's and no little U's. Whoever agrees to do it and sends in a nice little well thought, we publish them.
So now, do you have like different ministers anyway put like a message in your magazine, or is it basically the messages come from you?
Well, our magazine operates like any general magazine. So it's a seasonal based magazine. So whatever the theme of the season is, we try to fit into that theme, even though we're a Christian magazine. One of the other components that we include in our magazine is fashion. So we want our Christian people to know that, our believers and brothers and sisters of Christ to know that, you can dress well.
Yeah, that's good.
You don't have to skip all the stuff in the world. Yeah. Because we are saved from the world, so we got to do certain things. We got to put on clothes. But we want to look nice, and we want to look decent, and we want to look pretty, and we want to look feminine. And you can do that in a decent way. Yes. So we, a big component is our fashion. So people love us for our fashion articles and our entertainment, which is, again, it's KD Gospel. So it's about the gospel and the gospel music. So the whole total gospel industry. They love it to catch up on what the artists are doing, to see inside a Christian artist's life. We see so much going on inside of,
everybody else's,
all the other entertainers' life, but we keep it clean, we keep it justifiable, but we also have a message to our magazine, because again, we're sponsoring total wellness. So even though we're reporting on whatever's going on in an artist's life or whatever concert they got going on, we actually invite them into us so that they can explain to you their testimony in life. So, it doesn't end up being your just general interview. Okay. So it's just, I'm singing here, or, I had a good time at Pastor such and such. No, this is my trial. This is what I went through. This is what God took me from point A to point B to get me where I am today. And we think that's important for Christians because they want to be in this industry. We're gifted to be in this industry. So, but we need to be transparent as well, because it's part of ministry is being
Because
transparent.
it's helping somebody else. Maybe they went through something that somebody else is going through, and that's why I think it's so important.
Oh, absolutely. So, it's great that you got a Grammy. It's nice that you're getting that stellar, but why do you deserve it?
Mm-hmm.
Tell the folks how hard you had to work to get this.
Right. I'm just fascinated by all of the things, and you're even a part of our journey writer, so you're also a writer.
Yes.
I
try.
Yeah. No, you're really good at what you do. I want to talk a little bit about your book on unforgiveness. I read some little parts of it, and you're saying that unforgiveness is probably one of the biggest yet unnoticeable sins in the world today.
Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah, that's a statement in itself.
Okay.
And I say that because, and I'm going to talk mostly to our PK kids.
Mm-hmm.
We grow up in church and we know that we must love and accept everyone and everything and be forgiving about everyone and everything. And so that becomes our motto and our tagline. We're just forgiving and we're loving. And we embrace everyone. And it doesn't matter what you've done to me, it that might have hurt me deeply on the inside. I have to wear this mask that says I love you. And because I'm so used to doing it, mm-hmm. It's not necessarily even a mask anymore. It has become a permanent part of my skin. Mm-hmm. So it's like I'm just loving and I'm just so forgiving. And you see me growing up, I was always smiling. Mm-hmm. Nothing ever bothered me. And today people tell me, you know what, you're still just too happy sometimes. But now I express when people get on my nerves. You done got on my nerves. You've offended me. Mm-hmm. And we go through some of the worst church hurt is offensive. And it may be simple offenses, but maybe that you said something that you said wasn't appropriate, mm-hmm. to someone, and you didn't even check the expressions on their face to see that you hurt them, mm-hmm. So you think it's okay, and they're thinking, okay, oh well, it's done. Yeah. So I'm forgiving you. Yeah. And that's like hurt that's piled on. But then you have your individuals that come into the church, and everyone has gone through something, whether you are a PK kid or whether you were born inside the church, outside the church, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. We've all gone through something. You have survivors of abuse, rape, molestation, all of it, mm-hmm. from in and outside of the church. And what we've done in old school and old days, because I'm not that young anymore, we train people to say, that was my past. Mm-hmm. And even if it's my testimony, I'm only going to share a little bit of the testimony. And I can remember growing up in church saying, I don't hear much about anything except for the drug user. Right, yeah. That's the only real testimonies that get accepted.
Talk about
Exactly.
Abuse, molestation. They don't really want to deal with that.
Absolutely.
And make sure that it's going on. I mean, it's such a...
Absolutely. And then so that's how this book came about one day when God told me you're going to be a writer, and I'm like, okay. I can barely type 25 words a minute. Ask my best friend in Boston, who I sent all my homework to. Mm-hmm. She types it up for me. And I'm like, how you going to turn somebody?
You for it, he'll equip you for it.
He will equip me for it. And so, and I just put my hands to the plow, and I did as much as I could. And I would call her on the phone and say, could you take some dictations? Mm-hmm. And it turned out to be a journal. So it's not even a book, it's a journal. Okay. And it's a self-check journal. It's not me explaining to you what you need to be delivered from. Mm-hmm. It's you taking the components of each chapter, mm-hmm. figuring out where you are, and it actually guides you through levels of forgiveness.
Now, I see the first piece you have here mm-hmm. is first you got to diagnose.
Yes.
So when you say diagnose, what do you mean? Just actually realize that you have that issue with it?
Exactly. Okay. When you first feel like you're coming down with a cold, mm-hmm. I don't know about you, but for me, the first sign that I'm coming down with a cold is my throat will all of a sudden start getting scratchy. Yeah. So then it will go from my throat getting scratchy to, and I may notice it, but I may say, maybe not. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm not coming down with a cold. But then it'll go to my nose getting dry. Mm-hmm. And I'm still in denial. I'm just like, okay, yeah. Maybe a little bit of cold, but you know what? It ain't coming on strong, so maybe it'll just go by itself. Mm-hmm. So the idea of making a diagnosis is, in order for me to understand that I fully have a cold, all I would really need to do the minute my throat got sore was go to my doctor mm-hmm. and let my doctor do an examination. Mm-hmm. And once they do their examination, they can say, yeah, you just have a common cold. You may have a virus or a flu. You know what I'm saying?
Right, right.
As opposed to me just shucking it off.
Yeah.
And pretending that it's just going to go away on its own. So the important key to understanding that you are operating in unforgiveness is to have a diagnosis that you actually are walking in unforgiveness.
And admitting
it.
You have another part. So now, what's the difference between making a diagnosis? You have part 1 and then part 2.
I think there was just 2 different areas because I was coming from a medical term.
Oh, okay.
And part 1 was just like the introduction
of
the medical term of like see it through the doctor's eyes and see it through a physician's eyes, of why you need this checkup. And then the next one, the next chapter 2 goes into, okay, so now that you understand the process, let's get into the process.
Okay, gotcha. Now the next piece talks about the injection of fear.
What's the biggest reason why folks don't tell?
Because of fear.
Right.
Yeah.
So your baby gets molested and decides never to tell you. Why do you think they're not telling you?
Because it's either the person who's did whatever
has threatened
them, or you got the child that maybe not believing that the parent is going to believe.
Okay. And so for me, the important parts of understanding about fear is to understand that there is a healthy fear. And the scripture talks about that. God talks about there's a healthy fear. Then there's that fear of God. But then there's that unhealthy fear that we carry around, which seems to take more control of us than any fear. We have to learn that unhealthy fear is really more damaging us and what's causing our symptoms of unforgiveness. It's not saving us from anything. It's actually creating or allowing the symptoms to grow, within us. But we need to take on that healthy fear and just fear God. And God does not want us hurt. He does not want us abused. Right. He doesn't want us walking around offending each other. Take on that healthy fear of God and say, you know what? I'm not going to fear this person who's done this to me. I'm going to fear the outcome of if I don't get delivered from it. Because I won't be able to meet the full potential of what God has for me. And so many people have not fulfilled their ministries or their desires or their hopes or their dreams because of something that transpired when they were younger or some sort of offense of being told they weren't good enough or whatever,
Yes. Emotionally unbalanced. You're saying unforgiveness can make you emotionally unbalanced?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When a kid is acting out, one of the first things as counselors, and I have some counseling training and certificates and things like that. So one of the first things that they teach us is to pay attention to the nonverbal responses of an individual. So if a person is acting unruly, what can you take from that? It's not necessarily that that kid has a bad bringing up. Some of that could be that something's happened to that child, and it may not be the parent or any relative that has done it. But something has transpired within that child, and because they don't know how to process those emotions, they become unruly. And unruly kids grow up to be unruly adults.
Yeah. So this sounds like a really power-packed book.
Absolutely, from experience too. So, especially that emotionally unbalanced part. Because I used to be a big fan of walking around saying that, I'm forgiving, nothing matters. And at the point of the time where this book came, I was in a very unhealthy and abusive marriage. Walking around with broken bones and things like that, and people didn't even realize it. And my emotions would go up and down. And I can remember one time someone said something to me at the point where I was just getting to the point where I was deciding I wasn't going to take it anymore, but I wasn't doing it in a healthy way. I wasn't seeking counseling. I wasn't getting help. Nobody still knew what had happened to me or what was going on. So someone said something to me, and I was literally in a church facility. And I told the person I would take off my high heel shoe and put the heel in their forehead. And they just looked at me and they were like, Deanne. And they couldn't believe it came out my mouth. And I couldn't believe it, but at the same time, I was serious. It's just like, I'm not going to take it anymore. But at that point, I also realized, girl, if you don't get some counseling.
Right, because the person that you were like acting out on had no clue that you had been where you were.
Exactly. And even though they were being rude at that time, they still had no clue what I had been through and that I was at that point. And it was just like, damn. And I'm like, oh, okay, let me back that up. I can't take it back because I said it, but.
How hard was it for you to forgive the person, the abuser?
Oh God, that was so hard. Because again, at first I had to get to the point to realize that I hadn't forgiven him. And during the process of this book, that, if you notice, the book is only 100 pages long. When I first started writing that book ended up being a novel size. It was over like 300, 400 pages.
Okay.
Seriously. And it was just a whole 300 to 400 pages of me emptying out everything that I had gone through during this marriage with this person. You understand? So at that moment, it was just like, God said to me when it was done, I'll never forget this. I even had a wonderful professional editor from the Hartford Courant editing this book for years.
Okay.
So while it was 400 pages, patient person, right?
Yeah.
And so God said to me, now I need you to take out this, and this. And that book literally came down to 100 pages. And I'm like, are you serious? Why do we go through that process? He said, so that you can empty out all that drama, so you can see what I'm delivering you specifically from, you know, not you just putting it back in your mind saying, okay, I'm just forgiving everything. But you need to see it by name, shape, and size. And now that you see it, when you take all this out, it'll be ready for public consumption. You know, and so going through that process wasn't easy because during that whole time, I'm just like, well, when did I forgive him for that? It's like, you never even addressed it. They did it, and you kept moving. And that is why you don't trust people. That is why you don't want people near you. That is why you stay in your own little zone.
Right.
But that was also why he couldn't use me at that beginning stages when he was developing.
Empty all of that.
Had to empty it all out.
Now, how if somebody wanted to purchase your book, how would they go about getting the information on?
Right now, it is on Barnes and Noble's Nooks, but it's also on Amazon.com. We just picked up a publisher who's taking it on. So sometime next year that will switch over, but right now it's still on Amazon.com and Barnes and Noble's Nook.
Okay, and the title of that was again?
Unforgiveness, the Unnoticeable Sin.
Unforgiven, okay.
And if you notice the tagline on that, it was sponsoring total wellness. So that brings us to our broadcast.
Okay, bring us. I know I got so caught up in it because it seemed so interesting to me. So we'll talk about the
you know what's amazing, Teresa, when I go back and read it, and even over the years, like the reason why we're discussing it now is because God had me go back and re-edit it and add some things to it. But because at first we were using it in trainings. So it became a component for trainings. That book, when it first was written, has traveled all the way to overseas to Uganda and stuff like that, with evangelists, and they would use it to train overseas, and they would send me back letters telling them how wonderful, you know, the book was for those kids who were going through rape and all the tragedies that they were going through. So the book really helped them, and it helped them to teach them how to get through the process. But God had me revamp the book and make sure everything was clean for public sale. And that's what I did over the year and stuff like that. So even when I went back to read it, I'm like, girl, you wrote this?
I got to get big. I know you sent me a copy, so I can get away with the cheap one. I want to be good and order it. So we want to talk about radio, magazine,
Okay.
and all of that. So, how did you get started with, the radio station, the magazine? How did you get started?
The magazine came first, so after I finished Unforgiveness, I'm excited, I'm happy. I'm like, okay, I'm done with that project. I ain't got to hear from God. I don't know if you remember, Prophet Wayman Thomas came through St. John's at one point. He used to come through periodically, young guy, and used to go through and prophesy. Well, he had given me this huge prophecy on being a publicist and things like that, but he had no idea I was writing a book. So he had told me I was going to be an author of books, but then I was going to be a publicist as well and things. And I'm like, that man I don't even know what a publicist is. But you know how you stand there and people prophesy and you don't want to look like you don't know what they're talking about. So I'm standing there and I'm like, okay. So when I get home, I had to look up what's a publicist, and then I had to look up a few other things he said. And then I'm like, Father God, all this has to do with writing. I'm not doing this. Why do you want me to do this even? And so, going back and forth with those little conversations with God, because I do have them that way with him. He's my daddy. It's okay. One day I was on my couch sleeping and he said, you're going to start a magazine. And I'm like, I know that got to be Satan. Just like devil, you's a liar. I was like, I know I like to read magazines. I buy them every other week, but God knows I have no idea how to put a magazine together. That just no. And so he just kept speaking it over a number of days and things like that. And I finally told my husband, my new husband at the time, and he said, if God said it, you got to do it. I'm like, go for it. But I have no idea what to do. And so I really have to give thanks to one of my mentors, whose name is Darnell Roebuck, and they call him Big Husky. He's a radio host himself, and he started out in Philly. And somehow my book made it to him in Philly. And he called me for an interview. And after the interview about the book, he says, I want you to hang on the line. So he's just, when this music was playing, he's like, we need to talk. He's like, I feel like God is calling you to something more. What is it? I'm like, man, he is calling me to do a magazine and I have no clue. And he's like, exactly. And he's, and after talking to him for a few minutes, he said, I'm going to do you a favor because you're going to do what God told you to do because you're not stopping at this book. And he says, I'm going to send you a list and I expect you to utilize that list. What he did for me, no other person would probably do for anybody. He sent me a list of all of his artist contacts and their managers.
Wow.
So my magazine got off to a good start from the beginning.
Wow.
Because of Darnell Big Husky Roebuck. He's in Texas now and he still has radio.
God was setting you up.
He was setting me up.
He was equipping you for what he called you for.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And so I started doing my research and I started, leaning on people who in the field, started, reaching out to people in the field. I'm a big fan of finding someone to motivate you or mentor you through processes. So since I knew nothing, I knew I needed to get a mentor. Now, Darnell was radio host. He had those connections, same people we would be interviewing in magazines are interviewed on radio. So he was okay to give me that list, but he knew nothing about magazines. So I had to reach out and find people.
Okay.
And so anybody with that desire, I encourage you, find a mentor.
Yeah. Yes.
It is not easy.
Yeah. I was going to ask you next, what obstacles did you encounter?
You do have people that don't want to share information.
Yeah.
And so you have to spend a lot of time reading and and even though you think there may be an easy way around doing something, if someone gives you all the information, there's really no easy way around it because what they're doing or what they've been involved with may not be exactly what God is calling you to do to that extent. So you still have to figure out ways to critique this. And so there were a couple of Christian magazines out, and I think the biggest ones were Charisma and things like that. So I started studying them, watching their flow. And when I would reach out to people and mentors and things like that, and they would give me little pieces of information to put it together. And our first issue, I will never forget this. I landed J. Moss.
Wow.
Yeah, for our first issue.
Wow.
Babies, our first issue. So he loves people that are stepping out on their own and things like that. So he decided to do the interview. But during that process, just before we released the magazine, God said, that's Obama was running for president, first president. He said, you're going to cover the inauguration. I was like, you done lost your mind. I was like, why do you keep doing this to me? I was like, there's no way we're going to be able to get in there. All those guards, all these people, we are new. This is our first issue. They know us from not Adam or Eve. So he said, you're going to cover it. So I went and told my husband, I said, we're going to cover the inauguration. He's like, he said, you're going to cover it, you're going to cover it.
Right.
So he did some research. He said, okay, so we need to get a pass to get in there. I was like, they ain't going to give us no pass.
Listen to you.
First magazine. He sent the email to the people, and in 2 days came back and said, we've been approved.
Wow.
I was like, are you kidding?
Wow.
So needless to say, we had to bump J. Moss for...
Mr. Obama.
Well, Mr. Obama. But we ended up releasing two issues at that time. One a premiere and then one the actual issue. That way we got to keep J. Moss on one of the covers.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, because both of them was a good.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I'm just like, but I made J. Moss a promise.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. And see, that's, again, keep coming back to if he calls you to something.
Yeah.
He's going to equip you. And what's that scripture where it says, if he gives you something, it's going to be without sorrow? I don't know how to quote this. You know, like if God blesses you with something and it's really a blessing from him, you'll get that without sorrow. He's not going to bring sorrow.
Oh, he makes it rich without sorrow?
Without something like that.
Okay, you're paraphrasing. I'll get it though.
Yeah. Oh, no.
But exactly, that's exactly it. I mean, you're going to have to work for it.
Right.
And the type of sorrow he's talking about is that it's not going to be detrimental sorrow, because you're going to cry sometimes.
Yeah, right.
Plenty of times I want to throw up my hands and say I'm done. Had that moment just yesterday. You know, had to reach out to my new mentor for 2018. And he was like, girl, you better stand still and don't move unless God tell you to move.
That's right. That's right. Well, I was going to ask what survival techniques did you use to survive, but I know what it probably was. Your faith, your mentors.
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
You answered that by talking.
And my thing is, I just have this thing about me. Either God is or he isn't. Either he will or he won't. The only problem we have is with man.
Yes. Now, where do you plan for your company to be in 2018? Right around the corner.
2018, our broadcast will be on many more stations. We're gonna we're gonna be establishing in Arizona, which is where we actually started the launch of the magazine. So we're gonna take it back to our hub. We're gonna leave a company here. We want to hire some people and work with some interns and let them get to feel hands-on on what it means to run a magazine as we relaunch and what it means to run a broadcast.
Okay.
I see us doing a TV segment,
Okay.
interviewing on air. So,
Sounds
but I
exciting.
see me being able to put people in places to help build this and delegate this thing, and me doing a lot less of it.
Yeah, kind of sit back and kind of.
Yeah.
Now, since your hub is going to be in Arizona, do you want to relocate back?
Oh, I'm going back to Arizona. There's no ifs, and buts, or what's about that.
Me and the other D was just talking about Arizona. They don't have no trees or no grass.
They got palm trees with fruit on them. You get to smell the fresh air.
They don't got no. We don't have no green grass.
You should have seen me the first time I saw the oranges on the tree. I'm like, what is that hanging from the trees? And I'm like, are those real oranges or are those fake trees? And so, we walked up and we touched them. I'm like, oh my God, these people got fruit trees in their yard. Just about everybody has a fruit tree.
Oh my God,
Yes,
that's something.
yes.
No grass but trees.
No grass with trees. Go
Okay.
figure. And the most beautiful thing in the world is a cactus growing a flower from the top. Go
Oh my God. We had some kids up here that came for a play that I was in, and they were. I was telling Dee that they were so excited riding around because they were looking at the trees with the leaves, and I was like, "You guys act like they were like we don't have trees like this." So you're excited about going back there.
Absolutely.
So about how long you think? Are you just you haven't?
We're gonna relaunch back sometime in 2018. We've been here doing this for a couple of years now, doing the broadcast. So we're getting ready to just put all the components together to start our corporation and make it bigger than little old I and big old him. Also, I'm releasing a play and I want to start working with films. So that's part of what I went to school for, was to learn how to write films. So I want to create faith-based films and sitcoms that we can sit back and enjoy and just not have to have our kids cover their eyes, their ears every 20 seconds.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Have you got any connections for, as far as, producers and all that kind of stuff that's in the film industry that can, they will be able to help you out with that?
I actually have one friend, and I know he's tired of me because he's like, when is she going to get started? But it's a wonderful person that we actually interviewed in our magazine when he first started his company, and his name is Mario Jackson. He actually follows me on Facebook, and we follow each other basically. But he has a film company, and I think Mario is in Virginia at this time. But I love him so much, and I love his work so much, and I love the fact that he started his business because God said so, and I've seen him go through his struggles and his trials, and now it's his season, and I'm not watching him grow. I'm like, that's the man right there.
All right.
Whatever business I get, Mario gets.
Wonderful. Now I know that there's some voting going on.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Okay, so for all your viewers, by the time this airs, it'll be done, but up until the 29th of December, we have made the second round of stellar nominations under WSDK, but our broadcast made the rounds.
All right, congratulations.
And after only a year and a half of being on this station, so it's phenomenal. It is phenomenal. God. We made second round, and when I saw how many people were I was surprised that we actually made first round, but when I saw how many people were in the first round, I'm like, oh God, okay, this is nice. I won't get my hopes up. But then when I got the email saying you made it to the second round, and then I went on and saw all, how small the second round was.
Oh my God.
Jesus. Yes.
That's quite an accomplishment.
Yes.
Not to say, if you don't win, don't worry about it. But it is. If you don't, it's still such an accomplishment.
It is. And the one thing I will say to people, to anyone, is the importance of following Christ on it all. Everything I'm doing right now, none of it was my desire nor my intention to do, but Christ said it, so I decided to be like a kid and be obedient. What you want, Jaddy? Well, okay. All right, let's do this, Jesus. Okay, so, and even when I get my headaches and stuff like that, people be like, it's almost like you be talking yourself out of it before we can talk you out of it. You know what I'm saying? Because you already know what the end is. It's going to happen with or without you. The point of the matter, are you going to be obedient and do it?
Right.
So God gives you these little nuggets because he's saying this thing is bigger than you. Everything God gives us to do is bigger than us. What he's giving you to do on this station is bigger than you.
That's right. And my heart on this station is to help people to launch whatever they, to me it's like almost like a ministry.
And I've watched you, and you don't know it, but I've watched it, and every time you put something up, I said, let me go and see what little Teresa doing. I'm like, okay, I might have to tell her to critique this and that, But at the same time, it's just like, I'm so proud of you because you're given that opportunity, but you're not just giving them the opportunity, God's giving you the opportunity to evolve into what he wants you to be. And that's what I call it, my evolving. I didn't start off this way, I evolved into this.
Yes. Well, I'm wishing you the total best, and we're going to be keeping our fingers crossed. But wherever God places you at, you made such a huge accomplishment in such a short time. I mean, I think it's just really wonderful. But I want you to look in that camera, and what can you say to encourage those who are watching you? What would you like to say to them?
I also do some motivational coaching and trainings, and one of the things I do, and I probably can't remember them all right now, is called the 5 R's. Be reliable, relatable are the first two that we discuss in those things. Whatever God has asked you to do, your job is not to be reliable or relatable to man. It's to be reliable and relatable to God. You must first find out exactly what God wants you to do with this thing. Don't be in such a hurry to run out and just go bam. God told me what to do. But as you see, we had some discussions going back and forth till I was clear actually on what he wanted me to do, until I settled myself and said, you're going to do it anyway. So I have a little model that I learned from Joyce Meyer. God, take me kicking and screaming. I don't care. Let's just get it done. And so that's not to say that you're going to have that attitude, but not everything we do, we have a positive mind towards. Some of us are coming out of that fear. Mm-hmm. And God is placing us in these positions to where we can't afford to be fearful. Mm-hmm. So we can't afford to be fearful as of what God is asking us to do. And a lot of our fear comes from whether people are going to approve of us, mm-hmm. help us, mm-hmm. you know, and we need to stop that as believers. We really do need to stop that, because if no one helps you, that does not mean that the job does not need to get done. Mm-hmm. That means that you need to say to yourself, God, if it's just me doing this, let us get it done. Mm-hmm. Send your angels, bring your revelations on, and let's just do this. And then as you do that, what you will in turn see is that people will see that you're motivated now. Forget the first group of people who didn't help you, because now you're beyond that point. There's a new group that has entered your field, and they will see your motivation. Mm-hmm. And they will want to help you. At least some of them will. Mm-hmm. And again, those that don't, you keep it moving. Keep it moving. Because it's about your faith. Right. So now I use a bunch of hashtags in my little quotes, and it's called hashtag simply faith, hashtag simply put. In other words, if God said it, simply put, I'm going to do it. Mm-hmm. Hashtag simply Deanne.
All right now. All right. Now, one more time, tell people how they can get your book. Oh no, I don't know if you want to put any contact information out there. If anybody want to contact you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
we're a business, so you can always contact me at Deanne at KDGospelMagazine.com, and that's Deanne spelled DEANNE at KD Gospel, the letter K, the letter D, the word gospel, magazine.com. You can always send me an email if you have something interesting you want to say or you want to introduce to me. You'll send it to that email as well. Again, Unforgiveness, the Unnoticeable Sin, sponsoring Total Wellness, is also on Amazon.com and Barnes & Noble Nooks. You can find us on air every Saturday at 5 p.m. on WSDK, Life Changing Radio, 1550 AM and 95.3 FM. I said that a little backwards, so it's WSDK, 1550 AM and 95.3 FM, and it's Life Changing Radio. So we're you can get us in your cars, and you can also get us on the internet as far as the radio goes, and it's every Saturday at 5 p.m.
That's right. All right. Because I watched it. I mean, I listened or watched it when I was down in Virginia.
Did you? See?
Yeah.
Yep.
In North Carolina.
You did?
Yes, I did.
Oh, we had this one pastor on our show not too long ago who on the show just bust out and said, because I asked him, did he know something? He looked at me and said, girl, I listen to your show every Saturday. And I looked.
Yeah, it's a really good show. And I just want to thank you for being with me today.
Thank you for having me.
And I'm really just praying and knowing that everything is going to go well, and just wishing you the best with the magazine, with everything, all the stuff that you're doing.
All the stuff.
You know, and all the encouragements that you're giving out to people. So thank you for being here tonight so much.
So welcome. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for watching Diversity in the Community, and we'll see you next time. Good night.